Have you ever traveled through time? We do it every day.
Asgardia is a country with a population of more than 1 million people from more than 200 countries on Earth. Asgardia gives everyone equal opportunities, no matter what their earthly status is.
It is possible to create and live in the future right now. Are you ready? Forward progress is the solution to the entire human race. Our mission is to bridge new horizons. In Asgardia, there is no limit to the universal development in the fields of technology, finance, and arts. Asgardia is a new space and digital economy which creates opportunities for the global economy. We deliver innovations. Do you want to get on board with us? We are developing various kinds of digital businesses, attracting them to the Asgardia platform that can be backed by the means of our umbrella, i.e. franchising of the Asgardia brand. We can not only attract investments into space programs from prominent institutional investors, but also affordable amounts from the citizens of Asgardia. We comprise of more than 1 million people.
Asgardia is a chance to realize one's dream. This is a dream-driven space nation. Asgardia is a chance to belong to a community of free-thinking enthusiasts, goal-driven dreamers, and fearless innovators, theorists, and scientists.
We are the first space nation. One humanity, one unity.
Asgardia.
We are creating
The future.
And I speak a little English.
Yes, English is in other places. That's good.
Yes.
Maybe not perfect for many of us, but we can understand it.
And you speak it so well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Peter.
And Benedetto
I
as
need
well,
more-
both of you.
More Grammarly.
Yeah, well, you can't expect it to be perfect. My English isn't perfect, and I've been speaking it for 70 years.
No, yeah. Well, that is the reason. My Spanish also.
Yeah. Well, I wonder where our inestimable chairman is.
Oh, yeah. I remember my son when he was 6 months spelling water, also in Spanish, perfectly.
Uh-huh.
And I surprising, yes,
Yeah.
agua, agua.
Very good.
I remember that because I say to him, ¿Quieres agua? Do you want water? And he said, agua. Y yo repetí la palabra. I repeat the word, agua. And he said, agua. I love it.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
My neurosurgeon, yes.
Surgeon.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neurologist with a specialist in spinal column.
Right.
Very young, but
So yes.
he is very, very clever.
So
I'm proud.
your spinal surgeon.
Yes.
Yes, I wish we had a spinal chairman. Where the devil is he?
Well, he is younger. He finished the specialist, the master degree or something like that. Yes.
No, and here, speaking of master's degrees, here's somebody with a doctorate. It's Sarah.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarah's online.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
It's lovely being surrounded by these bevy of beauties in our parliament. It's so nice.
Well,
Nobody ever. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, I will take that as a compliment this morning. So thank you.
It is a compliment. It was meant to be a compliment, and it is a compliment. Nobody ever tells me I'm beautiful. Oh, here's Lambert.
I think I joined. Good morning and good evening, world. I think I joined at a good moment there.
Yeah, Lambert. Everybody tells Lambert he's beautiful, but nobody ever tells me.
Peter, I think you're beautiful. Okay.
Oh, thank you, John. I think you are too.
That's all very, very disturbing. Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust your set. Some things, Asgardia does not get involved in British or world politics. We do engage in irony from time to time.
Yeah.
We'll start now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, world. I'm Len Batopic, the Chair of Parliament of Asgardia, the world's first fully functioning digital democracy. And this is the first of 3 days of our final digital sitting for this year. In today's session, we will do some administrative things, but before we go any further, let me ask our interpreters to introduce themselves. What we have is a system where 4 languages are represented: English, Spanish, Russian, and Turkish. That's 1/3 of all the recognized languages in Asgardia. So let's start with our Russian interpreter to explain to you how you can hear everything in Russian. Over to you. Good evening.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Wishing you good work today and for the next days.
Thank you.
Добрый вечер. Приветствую всех на 7-м цифровом заседании парламента Асгардии 2-го созыва. Перевод осуществляется в синхронном режиме на 3 языка: русский, испанский и турецкий. Русскоязычным слушателям переключать канал не требуется. Вся информация будет в этом русском канале. В случае выступлений или комментариев на русском или английском языке просьба говорить чуть медленнее обычного, чтобы мы успели сделать перевод. I've finished.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's move on to our Turkish interpreter next. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Mr. Rapik.
Hi.
Değerli Asgardia parlamenterleri, Asgardia 2. Parlamentosu'nun 7. oturumuna hoş geldiniz. Oturumlarımızın ilk günündeyiz. Yine tercümanlarınız Eren ve Alper size Türkçe ve İngilizce eş zamanlı olarak tercüme yapacak. Türkçe tercümeyi Zoom pencerenizin alt kısmındaki küre ikonuna tıklayarak seçebilirsiniz. Söz aldığınızda tercih ettiğiniz dilde konuşmanız yeterli olacaktır. Tercümanlarınız tüm söylediklerinizi diğer dile anında çevirecektir. Hepinize verimli oturumlar dileriz. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And finally, let's go to our Spanish interpreter. Greetings to you.
Bienvenidos, estimados parlamentarios, bienvenidos a este primer día de la sesión digital de el segundo Parlamento de Asgardia. Las traducciones para la sesión están disponibles en los idiomas ruso, turco y español. En sus pantallas está disponible esta opción si desean escuchar en su idioma de preferencia. Si tienen alguna pregunta técnica sobre cómo accesar, levanten la mano o comuníquenselo a la coordinadora por mensaje. Si desean hablar o presentar en alguno de estos idiomas, pueden hacerlo teniendo en cuenta que no necesitan hacer pausa, pero le pedimos hablar despacio para hacer la mejor interpretación posible. Gracias y tengan un lindo día.
Thank you, everybody. And let me ask you all to remember 2 things. Please speak at a slow speed so that our interpreters can translate everything. And that means that everyone hears everything which is being discussed. That's very important. Secondly, if you do not hear something, if there is a problem, then please get in touch. Just raise your hand or just speak, and then we will fix that. It's important that everybody hears everything that occurs. Now, let's get on to the business. As regular viewers and all the parliamentarians know, we are now the most experienced digital democracy in human history. And each time we do this, we get a little bit better. The format of our digital sittings is 3 days. Everybody has an equal right to speak. Everyone is welcome. Government ministers and all parliamentarians. It's an open floor. It's also a formal session. It's part of the constitutional responsibility of members of parliament in Asgardia to attend. The objective of these sessions is to make progress with legislation, with parliament and government relations and work, and also with the work of the 12 committees, which represent the 12 areas of focus of Asgardia. Those 12 committees are also represented as 12 ministries in the government. Therefore, you will meet a lot of people from all of those areas in the next 3 days. Day one is usually quite short. What we do today is we open the voting. I'll do that in a moment. We look at the agenda and we cover any procedural questions that people have. I will also make announcements to bring you up to date with everything that has been agreed about what we will cover and how we will cover these items in the next 3 days. Finally, on day one, we have the opportunity to raise any other subjects which you may want to highlight. And usually, if there is some special change or some request, then I will try to accommodate that. I will try to make that change. And I'll make one change like that in today's announcements. It's an open session. Nobody is censored. No one is cancelled. Everyone is allowed to say what they wish. I do not need to say the next thing, but it is always necessary for us to be polite. We don't have to agree, but we should always be polite. Remember, there is a global audience, people from all over the world and of all ages watching. So that's my only request. But I don't need to say that because we always have a very high standard of good behavior here in this Asgardian Parliament. So let me do what I always do, which is start with announcements. The announcements are really as follows. First of all, we now have I've got a clear final picture of the agenda, and there will be, I have not changed the written version, but I will explain some developments which will take place tomorrow and Sunday when we review the agenda in a few minutes. Secondly, the voting is now open, and one item of the 5 items that you can vote for is the agenda. It's really a quorum count. If you vote no for the agenda, then the agenda is rejected. But I hope you vote yes for it. What matters is that 50% of Parliament plus 1 vote in the quorum count, because we need to be quorate for our vote to count. So I would ask you to vote for the quorum, vote for the agenda, or vote against it or abstain. But please register your presence now, because we need to get to that 50% plus 1 to make sure that everything we do in this sitting is official. It's recognized, it's quorate. 2 more things. The team has been very helpful by the team, I mean the parliamentary team, but also government team. The Prime Minister is very helpful in making a few breakthroughs, and I will share one of those today, but we will talk more about that tomorrow. So on this point, we are still evolving our processes, and it is 100% fine for colleagues here to make points and criticisms of how we do things. I'm always very happy to take those on board and try to fix them. I do believe that we have a good timing now. We start 1700 UTC day 1. 1300 UTC day 2 and 1500 UTC day 3, and it seems to work. But I'm always happy to take feedback. Finally, I am always willing to get ideas for future guest speakers. Sometimes we have them, sometimes we do not. And if you have suggestions, today is a good day to make those suggestions, but you do not have to. You can make them in writing as well, or contact me in a different way. And to summarize this part before I go through the agenda, I hope you as a viewer, wherever you are in the world, will see that we are better than anything else you will ever see in terms of a digital democracy in the world. And that's not a political comment, it's a professional one. Across almost 8 years now, we have learned by doing how to make this happen. And in answer to a question that I was asked, why do we need to make it a digital democracy? It is because when the Asgardians are living on Mars and on the moon and in orbit, we cannot easily physically meet. So we have to find another way to do it. And so the digital democracy we are creating is part of the infrastructure of political society for humans in space. That's why we do it. I like it when we meet physically as well, but by the definition of how space is and the great distances involved, we have to show that digital politics, digital democracy can work and does work when good human beings with a common purpose get together. And I hope that you'll enjoy that. Now then, let me go through the agenda. So I'm going to point to now procedural issues, recording of quorum and adoption of the agenda of the meeting. I've opened the voting, so that will be open till 1700 UTC on day 3. That is Sunday in most countries. So that's 1700 UTC, the voting will close to the minute. You can vote on the quorum. You can actually vote on everything, but you have not yet heard the debates. I will go through what is on the voting agenda shortly. Please do vote for, against, or abstain on the quorum, because it is always helpful for me to know that we have achieved that quorum. I've made the announcements. Now, I want to go through the agenda. So today, we will speak for as long or as short a time. The minimum this is usually, the day one takes is 30 minutes. The longest can be about 90 minutes usually. Someone else asked me, why are the sessions efficient on time? It is because at the beginning, all of the translation was in series. So you would have one language, then the other, and we would wait. Now we have simultaneous translation. So in reality, with 4 languages, we have saved 75% of the time that we would need if we did this in the old way, in the original way. And that's made us a lot more efficient. It actually means we do more work in the same time. So that's the answer there. Right, so today we will cover any points that you want to cover, any questions, any procedural points, and I'm flexible. If there are issues, then you can make that clear, and I will try to be flexible and accommodate those points. Because my goal is not to just follow a list of instructions and an agenda. My goal is to get the very best outcomes we can in the collective interest of Asgardia. So tomorrow we will start at 1300 UTC, day 2. Day 2 is always the day where we do the heavy lifting, if you like, the main study of legislation, the main discussion of legislation, and that's what will happen tomorrow. It's the same as it always is. It's going to be debates presented by those people who have been in charge of pushing legislation forward, and then we move on that basis to a vote. The vote is all online. So after the announcements, we will be talking about a number of different pieces of legislation. And usually we have between 4 and 6 pieces of legislation in operation at any time. This is the case for this session as well. So we begin with the first reading of the Asgardia Tax Act. And Sarah Evie Clark, the new chair of Finance Committee, is continuing work which was begun by the former chair of Finance Committee, Alexander Rizzi. And so this is the first reading of the Asgardia Tax Act. And Sarah will be presenting that. Hopefully, Sarah, you got the message about the version that I think we're using. I think, well, I know which one we're using. I hope that we're both talking about the same one, but we can talk after this session as well, or we can talk online now if you want to make sure we're both talking about the same version. So that's Sarah, and Sarah will bring the first reading. Now, the first reading, if you are watching for the first time, covers the preamble, which is the overall statement about what we're trying to do with the legislation, the principles on which the legislation is built, and then a headline of the articles in that legislation as well. So it's the preamble, the principles, and the articles. That's what we will cover. And as usual, we will have a debate. And the vote will be on whether to agree the first reading. There will, of course, be a second reading and a third reading if the first reading is approved. And I have more to say about that process very soon. After that, we will have the Asgardia Competition and Fair Trade Act, and that's the first reading as well, and that's John Fine. John Fine is probably, well, he is the most experienced legislation designer anywhere in Asgardia. He has done more work on this than anybody else. That's good, because John is also very qualified to do this. He has studied as part of his formal higher education over the last 8 years exactly the skills, the knowledge, and the history of policy making that is required in order to do a great job on this. So that's the first reading as well. And after the debate, you'll be able to vote yes or no, or abstain on if you think that should go to the next stage. The next stage, again, after preamble, principles, and articles, will be the detail of what is in those articles, and it's usually always the long document. We have the Asgardia Copyright Act, which is at second reading. Ms. Dell has been managing that, and that will be available for you. Once again, presented by Ria, and available for debate, and also for you to vote on. As a piece of legislation which, if approved, will go to third and final reading at the next sitting. We then have the Asgardia Youth and Education Act, but actually there's a bit of a development there. The Youth and Education Act is a very long, an absolutely superb piece of work by Ms. Cornet Olivier. In fact, it's so good that in my experience of politics, which is 40 years, it's the first time I've seen a complete education system put together in one document. It's massive. It's so massive that I have worked with Corner to turn it into 4 documents, 4 pieces of legislation, because I think that is more manageable. Otherwise, really, we would have to spend 3 days talking on just this one piece of legislation. So what we are actually going to do is tomorrow, briefly, I'll explain the process that I've been using with Corner to turn it into a different document. But Corner will talk about the document on Sunday, on day 3, as part of her committee report. So there won't be a vote on that yet. But if colleagues are happy with what we're discussing, then we will vote on the first reading of that document. Once Cornet is also happy with it, she needs to have time. I do not want to put her under time pressure to just agree with something when she has not really had the proper opportunity to take that to her committee. So with the Youth and Education Act, I'll make a process point tomorrow. We'll not vote on it tomorrow. But then on the day 3, Corner will talk about this item. Probably with some contributions from me in her committee report for youth and education. I should say that for a lot of my political career in terrestrial politics, I have been directly involved with these issues. I was shadow youth minister, so I was in the world of youth politics as a shadow minister, which is one step off being the actual government minister in the UK for many years. And I was involved in student politics, and for that I was involved in debating at even a school level. So I'm interested in the subject. So that's what's going to happen with Cornus piece of legislation. And with John, fine, we have another interesting development there with the Consumer Protection Act third reading. And I've got some big news for you there. We are not voting on it tomorrow because we have made a huge discovery about how we can do the process of legislative feedback and development better. And it's because of the Asgardia Consumer Protection Act that we will be able to try the process with John. I'll come back to that in a minute. So once I finish going through the agenda, I want to come back to what I mean about the process. Then we got the government preliminary financial overview. That is the report from Minister Mark Bogan about where we are. It's a report. It's not for voting. It's a report about the budget and how money has been going in and coming out from the Asgardia economy and from the society, the state. That's usually a closed session, so we do not broadcast that. That's just our protocol. It is not because we have to hide things. It's because we have the need to speak freely and openly about that. And sometimes on financial matters, it is our experience. It's better if we are not on camera. We're in private on that. Then we've got the government tower. In the government tower, we get reports from Prime Minister Lena de Winne and also from government ministers. That's very important. Now, in terms of the government tower, I put it there as item 9, but actually, by precedent now, I like to give ministers a good time, a time when they will need to turn up for that government tower. And tomorrow we're going to do that at 1500 UTC. So wherever we are in the agenda, we will stop for the government hour at 1500. It's not always an hour. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But at 1500, we'll take a break from whatever we're doing, and we will go to the government tower. And I hope that that is acceptable to all ministers. I will just ask Linda if you can just send a note to confirm that to the Prime Minister, that it is now agreed. That's 1500 UTC tomorrow, for whatever length of time we need. Then, after the government tower, we will return to the other legislation, debates, and whatever else we need to do. In reality, the government financial overview and the government tower usually come together. So I will be happy to let the Prime Minister to decide if she wants them to be separate. But I expect, as usual, we will start with probably the financial overview, and then we will go into the broadcast government hour after that, probably. But I will let the Prime Minister decide how she wants to organise that. Then after all of that, we'll return to the legislation and finish the very latest by 2100 UTC. In reality, because of our wonderful simultaneous interpretation system, we almost always finish before 2100. It might be as early as 4 hours after we start. I don't mind the length of time as long as we get everything done. The maximum time we will have is 8 hours, and we won't need that. My guess is we'll need between 4 and 6 tomorrow, but that's just a guess. Then day 2 closes. Voting is open at all this time. So let's move to day 3. As always, this will be at 1500 UTC. I will start with announcements. We might have a guest speaker. I do not know at the moment, from a British astronomy group, but I do not know if he's available yet. If not, then we go straight to the work plans of committees. And please note that Corner will talk a bit more, and I will talk a bit more about the process for the Youth and Education Act, just to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing, and you can then feed back in that session, which is open and it will be broadcast, on how we proceed with this. I really want to get a voting item in the next agenda for the first sitting next year on youth and education. And so this is the beginning of that dialogue. And then we'll have all 12 committees, all 12 committees will have the opportunity to report. The voting will shut at 1700 UTC, 1700 UTC. So the session will not end before 1700 UTC. The latest it can go is 2000. So you do need to have voted by 1700, and sometime between 1700 and 2000, I will give the preliminary results of that vote. Then, as always, we'll have a review of priority acts, and I will summarize what I think is happening in terms of the process of getting important legislation in place. And then I will share the results of the voting on the agenda of the meeting of the Parliament, closing remarks, the Asgardia national anthem, and we close the sitting. I guess, just trying to be helpful, I guess that we will be finished at around 1800 or 1830 on day 3. That's a guess, but I think that's the time. So that's the agenda. Now, I want to go back in a moment and show and ask John to say a few words as well, though we'll talk about this in more detail tomorrow. Apart from the exciting development in terms of how we intend to proceed with making legislation, which we'll cover again tomorrow, are there any questions or comments about the agenda? Okay. If you do have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'm always happy to answer any question at all. That is something that you can do at any time that you like in the process of this session, and tomorrow and Sunday. For those at home, we do not do this according to the clock. We do not say, oh, we must fill 2 hours on Friday, 8 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday. We cannot go do longer sessions than that, but we can do shorter sessions. The objective is to get the work done. We have been working for 30 minutes already, and in the very beginning, that would have been 2 hours because of the simultaneous translation, if we had the 4 languages. So actually, already we have been de facto operating longer than we did at the beginning, but in a less time period, just because of the simultaneous interpretation. It's been such a massive advantage. Okay, if you've got any questions on that, then please let me know. Let me now move on to, I've got 2 other items for today. The next one is just one explanation, which I've been asked to clarify about, it's a procedural point, about how the agenda is actually created. So a number of people want to know this. Let me just explain. It's a very short explanation. The agenda is being created by the precedent of 8 years of parliamentary activity in Asgardia. We were the first to do it. There was no precedent. There was no template for us to follow. So we created digital democracy on planet Earth. The process has been evolved. We have changed the bits that don't work very well, and we have kept the bits that do. So this is a homegrown Asgardian process. And I spend a lot of time on Zoom, and no one does it better than Asgardia. And right from the beginning, we established we needed to have a set period of time, which is 48 hours, which is why we open at 1700 UTC on Friday, and we never close before 1700 UTC on Sunday. That's 48 hours. And we also established that voting is possible throughout that online. And we realized that the main day for legislation and government activity is day 2. Day 1 is administrative. Day 2 is politics, really, heavy politics. And day 3 is committee work. and that works well. So I haven't got anything else to say about that, but that's how it is, and we're still evolving it. We're still trying to make it better as and when we need to, but that is really the explanation. It is transparent. There are no secrets in that at all. But that leads me to the second point, and I think John's here as well. And I just want to tell you a little bit about this. John will explain this in more detail tomorrow using the third reading of his document as an example. But this is my final comment for now, and then I shall open it up to John and to all of you. We don't need to do any presentation today, but tomorrow in the session, which is about the Asgardia Consumer Protection Act third reading, we will use that chance as an opportunity to present the new system. We've now realized that the feedback system is good, but all of it has been going through me. And that's not an efficient way to run the feedback system in legislative development. So working with the Prime Minister, that's Lena de Winner, and John Fine, my team, Aliona and Linda, we have come up with a revolutionary but obvious development. The Constitution allows us to have working groups. That doesn't need extra legislation. It's already there. And I have the power to set these up. So I'm setting up a group called the Legislative Merit Review Group. It's a working group. And the objective of that is to make sure that the legislative development process is always on time, it's transparent, and it's managed by an expert, somebody who is qualified to do this. I suppose I am, because I've spent a long time in Parliament, but the more I can share these exciting and important roles, the better, because it increases the firepower of Asgardia as a whole. So I'm delighted to say that John Fine has agreed to be the delegated chair of that committee. What does that committee do? Well, I'll get John to explain in a minute. But in short, this will be the process which takes legislation after it's gone through first reading, so from second reading through to the end of its third reading, to make sure that process is followed, feedback is made, improvements are included, and that the person responsible for the legislation always has the assistance of those that he or she needs. It's great from my point of view because it makes another professional improvement to how we do legislation. It also means that the whole situation doesn't depend on the chair of Parliament. I like doing legislation, it's very fulfilling, but my duty is to lead, not to do everything. And this system should make it a lot easier for everybody all the time. I'll say one more thing and then I'll ask John if he wants to say something. But we'll do a worked example tomorrow because John will explain the history of what happened. We don't do that today. We won't explain why this change has happened, but tomorrow John can explain how this has happened. But in short, what this means is that if you want to do a piece of legislation, you start by contacting me, and I will help with I, as the chair of Parliament, will help get the first reading sorted out, and the legal approval. That's what we need. That's all we need for the first reading. And if the first reading is approved by the Parliament, then it goes into this new system, and that new system should revolutionize keeping on time, the quality of the feedback, and the level of support that the person in charge of legislation gets. So tomorrow, during the Asgardia Consumer Protection Act third reading, although we will refer to that third reading, the main reason to do that is to explain how John, who is responsible for that piece of legislation, is going to use that as a test of how well this new system works. And I hope that we can use, assuming the other legislation is passed, hope we can use all of this system for all of the legislation for the first sitting in 2025 or 0009 in Asgardia years. Let me go to John. Do you want to say something now? You don't have to, but at least unmute to say you're not going to say anything.
I can say a word or two.
Okay, that's good. And tomorrow, let's do the bigger presentation tomorrow. But just give an idea. This is groundbreaking. This is absolutely groundbreaking. So go ahead, John, if you want to share something.
Yeah, I've been busy putting a presentation together for everybody. I agree with what the chairman says. I believe this is going to make the system much more accessible and easier to manage. Its primary mission, of course, is to improve the flow processes of legislation. And we all know that there are gaps in our flow processes right now that need to be filled. And we're hoping to be able to fill all those gaps with this initiative. It looks promising. We had a good meeting yesterday with the Prime Minister, and she was on board with it. So, and which means and she said her ministers are going to be on board with it. So, that's going to be a really big plus for us to have that connection and that support, so that we can collaborate with that part of government. And so I'm literally looking forward to chairing it. You'll get a lot of details tomorrow. I hope to have it all done by tomorrow, because I was just told yesterday, and I am busy putting a presentation together, but I can't guarantee I'll have everything that I want to say in it. But I'll have at least something for you all to take home with you. So that's all I can say right now.
Thank you, John. Yes, we will leave the presentation till tomorrow. The reason that John hasn't had more time is because we worked it out. We only worked it out yesterday. It actually is a solution to a problem, which was partly because of me. The timings became very short, and I put the system under some pressure, not on purpose, but I did. But this often happens. When we have a problem, we often find a solution which means we are in a better place than if we did not have the problem in the first place. So actually, I am grateful for the problem, because now we have a system which John, as the acting chair for that, as a delegated chair of that committee, will be able to resolve. That means that we have a great massive force multiplier, great massive turbocharge to the way that the system works to really help people who are putting legislation forward. It's actually obvious that we need to do this, but it would not have been obvious before the fact that we were trying to fix things. We have fixed things now, and that's just great. I'm really, really pleased that we have done that. Any questions about this for now? I don't want to go further. I'll open this up for any other points in a minute. I got some questions as well, including to Sarah. Okay, John, I'm looking forward to your presentation. You've got the email that we sent yesterday. I'm very much looking forward to it, and big thank you to the head of the government, the Prime Minister. We actually spent many hours on this yesterday, and it's really good. It's a huge step forward, and it helps me a lot as well. Massive, massive help to me in doing my work. Okay, good. Okay, let me move on. I'm going to ask the Deputy Chair in a minute, Peter Morn, if he wants to add anything. Though actually most of this will become clear anyway tomorrow. Then I'm going to just check where we are with the right version of Sarah of the Tax Act. I want to check that that's okay. And then that's everything I've got for today myself. Peter, is there anything you want to add for today?
Oh. Yeah. Can you hear me, Lambert?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yep. Yeah.
There's not really anything to add except thank you to John for stepping up to the plate for that chairmanship, which is going to be a huge help. I think you've summed it up brilliantly, though, and we'll learn about more tomorrow. No, I'm very happy. Like as always, Asgardia finds a problem, thinks about the problem, solves the problem, and that's what you've all done. So well done, one and all.
There was thank you, Peter. Somebody said to me one time, the secret of British politics is to find a problem and make it worse. I don't know if I believe that, but it's a good line. The secret of Asgardian politics is not a secret. The ethos of Asgardian politics is to find a problem and fix it. So tomorrow you will see a really great step forward. I am really excited by this because it helps with an ongoing issue that I have seen. And the problem has got bigger and bigger as we have become more sophisticated in our legislative design. Now that we are operating at a high professional level, that has massively increased the workload in a good way. So we have to improve our work management system as well. Peter, is there anything else in any other subject you want to cover before I just check with Sarah about something and let me move on?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Lambert.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, now, fine, thank you. The only other thing I have for today is for Sarah. Are we clear which version we're using now, Sarah? If not, I can call you after the session.
Nope, I believe we are, and I just I shot you an email with
All right.
With specifics. So if you could just give me the thumbs up and thumbs down via email, that'd be great.
I'm sure it'll be thumbs up, and I'll check it as soon as we finish this. Yeah, no problem at all. That's good. Yeah, thank you. I quite like the idea of using file size like I did yesterday, by the way. Yeah. It means that everyone's using the same version. That's good. But I think we know where we stand with it, and that's just very good. Right, okay. That's everything I had. Now let me open it to anything else that anybody else wants to ask. Oh, sorry, there is one other point. Benedetto was asking if he could do his committee presentation tomorrow. That's fine. What I suggest we do this as the last item tomorrow. Benedetto is not available on the Sunday, so I would want to make sure Benedetto is able to cover it. So Benedetto, I can see Benedetto is confirming this. We will do your report tomorrow, and I expect it to be the last item tomorrow. That's no problem at all. Absolutely A-okay. That's absolutely fine. Thank you. And yeah, you don't have to thank me. I'm just pleased you're able to do it. That's just really very, very good. Thank you. Right, now, any other business that anybody wants to raise? I've done all the talking, but guess it's my job. Peter. Oh, I thought Peter made a noise, but then he disappeared. So maybe he was still on mute from before.
I was just agreeing with you, Lambert, that you've done all of the talking, but that's the way it should have been. So that's fine.
Peter, as deputy chair, has his own committee on Thursdays, which was created by a former deputy chair of Parliament, Ben Dell. And so the chairs of the committees meet beforehand, before the whole of Parliament on the informal Thursday meetings. And it's a system that works pretty well. Okay. Ariadne.
Gracias. Bueno, solo para recordar
Thank you.
que el día de
I
hoy,
just wanted
cuando yo lo
to,
recibí ayer en LinkedIn,
to
pero
remind
me
you all,
imagino
well,
que
I
es
got the
hoy
notification on Monday, but I
o
think it's for
ayer,
today,
bueno, no importa.
or
Lo
yesterday. I don't know.
interesante es que nuestro
What's
compañero Dwight
interesting
Simpson
is
cumplió
that
9 años en la revista Rumbo.
our
Y esta
worker
celebración es
Simpson
importante. Él es un
was
parlamentario.
4
Todos
years.
sabemos que siempre estamos a la
Yesterday was his
expectativa de
4th
las
year
noticias de la
anniversary with
revista
us
Rumbo.
in Asgardia,
Y él como jefe de edición
or
pues
in
está
the Room
cumpliendo
magazine.
años en la revista,
So
que
yes,
ya cuenta con
if
10 años.
his anniversary in the Room Magazine. And I just wanted to mention it so that whoever didn't read that can congratulate him. I think that's a very special anniversary. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. So I had a problem with the sound there. I don't think it's your fault. I think I've been doing most of the talking, so I think I've had a problem with the sound. Could I just ask our interpreter to briefly repeat the central part of Ariadne's question? I'm sorry. I think it was a problem with my system, not yours.
Don't worry, it's not a question. It's only a congratulations to Clyde Simpson because he is 9 years in Room Space Journal, and that's all to remember to all of us. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank
Great.
you.
I did get the essence of that. That's good. To those who aren't familiar, Clive Simpson is actually responsible for, I would say, the best space magazine and space related, and that astronomy and astronautics magazine
Sí, esa es una revista muy...
in the world. And for me, that is a really big achievement. Clive travels the world to represent us as well. He has been in many parts of the world, and I had the honor to join him at Colorado Springs in the United States in April when I was there to see Sarah Clark and many others in Dallas. So he is a great asset for us in doing that work. And he does other work too. So he's well connected in the space world. And I agree with what Ariadne says. It's great news that he's been with us. And I hope he carries on staying with us for a long time to come. Does anybody else want to raise anything today? I have a few bits of any other business, but before we do that, anything else that anyone wants to raise here? Okay. Right, I'm going to go to any other business. Please raise your hand if you want to raise anything before I finish. My objective in this sitting is to get the legislation moved forwards as usual, but also tomorrow to share this step change, this revolution in how we manage our legislative development process. It's not a big revolution, but it is a revolution because it codifies something in a really logical way. And I'm looking forward to sharing the good news with John using his space for the third reading, which will now, the vote for that will now be the next time, I expect, to share how we intend to do this. And a big thank you, as I said before, to the Prime Minister and to John and to all the other people who've been participating, Leona, to try and make sure that we improve the system. It's actually less complicated in a sense because it's totally transparent. And it means if you want to start legislation, but you are not sure how, you'll actually get all the help you need with us having a system which is there to support good legislative development. So that's really important. And then the second thing is, in answer to a question, yes, the corner legislation is not to be voted on this time. It's youth and education. So yeah, it hasn't been withdrawn. It's just I promised to see if I could develop it into manageable units, and this is another area which will naturally be good for the new process. So tomorrow we'll talk briefly about the rationale. I won't go into this anymore now, but the rationale for why we need to cut this legislation into smaller parts, because it's such a big subject, and how we intend to do that. And then Corner will talk about the content of the legislation, and maybe the first part. I've made a suggestion to her about what part one should be, and it will be for her to decide whether she agrees or not. But That was the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow in the session which is allocated for youth and education. So it's a short amount tomorrow on that, but then on the Sunday process tomorrow, and then more detailed discussion on Sunday. I'll come to you in a second, John, because I'm nearly finished. And then looking ahead, then we've got the John presentation about the new process as well. And the government hour, I want to really stress this, the government hour, and if I could ask our parliamentary coordinator to confirm this, and I will too, the government hour at 1500 UTC. I think that's the right time tomorrow. So 2 hours after we begin, we will have the government hour. 2 hours after we begin. Okay, that's everything I had. So let's go to John next, John.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give me a call after this session's over. I got a couple of questions I need to answer.
Absolutely, that's sure. I will do that. I will happily do that. Sarah, I don't think I need to call you now. I think you're ready. But if you need to talk with me, Sarah, as well, then just let me know. That's not a problem as well. Okay, so John, I will call you on that. And oh, right, hang on, just in the chat, seen something. Right, I've covered my any other business. This legislation not available to vote also is correct, Ariadne. Yeah, the two pieces of legislation that are not being voted on tomorrow are the third reading of the Consumer Act.
Yes,
which,
it's about the education.
Yeah,
The legislation about education, isn't it?
that's right. The two pieces of legislation that are not being voted on are the third reading of John Fine's, only because that will be the first piece of legislation we will take forward. A lot of feedback came in, and we can talk about the history of it tomorrow. It's interesting what happened, but it's basically because this is it's a perfect piece of legislation for us to test the first time. John has been in charge of it. He's going to chair the group, so he has no problem with the understanding of what this legislation is for and what it's about. And secondly, because it's a complicated piece of legislation with a lot of feedback which came in, and so that's a great way to start. So that won't be voted on tomorrow, but we're using the session tomorrow to discuss the process change. It was easier than just sending you a new agenda because we still want that space for the John Fine presentation on the process. That presentation will share how the process for legislative development will work for everybody, not just for John. The second point is, yes, Ariadne, as you say, the youth and education legislation is not for voting tomorrow, because that's been a huge piece of work. But if we start tomorrow, we'll talk about the rationale for what we're trying to do with it. And then on Sunday, Corner may share the first part as part of her committee report, but that is not for voting. Those two are not for voting this time. You're absolutely right. So yeah, and Ariane is right. It is very good that John's doing that. I'm really, really pleased, very pleased with that development. Ariana says your suit looks very appropriate, so perfect. Thank you. I don't normally wear a tie on the other informal sessions because you asked me not to. But for the official sessions, I do. You do not have to. I just feel better for the official sittings of the Parliament of Asgardia. I just feel better about wearing a tie. But there's no obligation. There's no dress code. When we live in space, I don't expect people to take their spacesuits off and put a tie on. I don't know if there will be any ties in space or on Mars. So that's just me, because I'm sitting on Earth, and this is how I have been used to dressing when I do my politics. That's all. John's got a problem with his camera. That's not a problem. Let's hopefully it works tomorrow. Yes, Benedetta's confirmed that we are all sorted with that. That's great. So tomorrow you're going to get a committee report so that we have that committee report tomorrow. And this is what I mean. If I can help you with process, I am always happy to help you with process because I want the work done. and for that, we can be flexible. I understand Carol saying that I may not be able to stay. That's okay. I know that life goes on around us, so you do need to be sure that you get your priorities right and do what you need to do. That's not a problem. The more time you can give, the better. But you don't get into trouble if you have to do other things sometimes as well. It's not a problem. And that's good. And Ariadne's and Carol's voted for the quorum. This is great. Thank you. And Ariadne has too. And one other question. Okay, Carol's been listening. That's great. And I'll see you tomorrow. Just one other question. It's a technical matter. I do vote now. Yes, I vote as well. At the beginning, I did not vote for items. Why? Because in British politics, the Speaker, the person who does my job, the Chair of Parliament in the House of Commons, does not vote, except if it's 50-50. Then the Chair will vote, give the casting vote. But I spoke with the head of nation on this some years ago, and he was not sure why I did not vote. And actually, he's right, and you're right. I am so involved in the process because it's a different process. We do not have the same system. So I vote according to what I think. And that's not always, yes. Sometimes I say, I would suggest that on this one, we don't vote it through, or I say, maybe this should be an indicative vote, because I take an active role. I'm not just running the process of the Parliament. I am actively, very closely involved in the success of Asgardia. So the head of nation was right, and those of you who suggested this are right. So I will be voting as well. You don't have to vote the same way, but I do vote now, and I hope that precedent will stay in Asgardia for hundreds of years, because I think it's helpful if the speaker, if the chair of Parliament does give an indication of what he or she thinks, and that's not because you have to agree with the chair, but it's helpful. Sometimes it just is helpful, and it also means that you can ask why the chair takes a position. If I don't vote, that means you can't ask me why I think something's a good or a bad idea. But actually, because I spend more time with all of this than anybody else, and it will always be that way, probably, that the chair of the Parliament of Asgardia spends more time than anyone else across the board on legislative and other decisions. And then it makes sense that I vote to express my perspective, and I am willing to defend it. There's a second reason. For example, British politics, there are parties, and the parties fight each other, and they are enemies almost, certainly competitors. We do not have parties in Asgardia, so the chair of the Parliament does not need to avoid taking a side. We are 150 individuals in our Parliament who are all on the same side, and therefore the disagreements are about what is best for Asgardia, not as what's best for worst for a party. And so therefore the need for the speaker to not vote, it goes away, it disappears, because actually we have the opportunity and the right to disagree and expect respect from everybody else. So that's why I vote. Hopefully that clarifies that point. Just checking. Okay, I think I've covered everything. I have nothing else for you today. Is there any other business anybody else wants to raise today? I will call John after this session. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to close the session for now, and then we meet again tomorrow at 1300 UTC, government hour 1500 UTC, and at the end of the session tomorrow, we'll have Benedetto's committee report. I'm guessing we'll need about 4 to 6 hours tomorrow, I think. Maximum will be 8, and the minimum would be 3. I think it'll be more than 3. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our interpreters. I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. John, I'm looking forward to talking with you in a few minutes' time as well. So until until tomorrow, after I finish talking, we will stop the recording. We got to 41, so when we get to 20 people, then I'll close it. It's 50% minus 1. That's when I close the broadcast. Have a good morning, noon, and night. Please don't be late. Let's have a great day tomorrow on the final sitting of this year of the Parliament of Asgardia, the world's first space nation and the world's first fully functioning digital democracy. If you like what you see, then join. And you could, for €100, dollars, or pounds, you can be a full resident of Asgardia and be involved in the whole civic life of the country, of the world's first space nation. And if you think that your terrestrial nation would like to do business and express bilateral relations with us, then please let me know, because that is the big mission, the huge mission that I have set myself for the next 12 months. And I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. Okay, thank you, everyone. We can close the recording for tonight. When we get to 20 in participants, I'll close it. And John, immediately after that, I'll give you a call. So, oho, and thank you very much for being with us.
Aho, everyone.
Oh, everyone. See you tomorrow.